Crystal, you're a very hard act to follow, I'll tell you, because we can all relate to post-traumatic stress. It is a real thing, but my name is Sylvia Barnes, and my son Steve did almost 20 years for a rape murder of a 16-year-old girl in our town that he didn't commit. It was a 20-year struggle. I guess we approached it just very privately as a family. I would have never ever thought to ask other people for money. I guess it just never, outside of family members. We just fought the battle alone, and we went through we got in the best defense attorney we could and got him out a $100,000 bail, and I thought, oh, this is great. Every day we get through the trial, and our attorney would say, hey, Steve, they didn't hurt you today, you know. So when the verdict comes in, you're just so shocked. You sit there through the trial. My son's case lasted trial about 3 weeks, and you have to sit there and you want to get up and strangle these people that are getting up and lying about your child, where he's been and what he's done, and it's just so degrading and so humiliating, and as a mother it just eats your heart up and it breaks it into a million pieces, and I'm still trying to get the pieces back together. We went all through the appellate court, did everything we could, exhausted all kinds of resources, and Steve was convicted in 1989, and in 1994 I watched the Phil Donahue show, and Barry Sheck was on there with about 6 fellows that had gotten exonerated, and he's talking about DNA, and well, I kind of perk up my ears and I'm thinking, well, that's only 3 letters of the alphabet. So I listened to the show, and I called the radio station and I said I need the address of the Phil Donahue show. But I really didn't want to wait for that, and Barry had mentioned that he taught at Cardozo Law School. So in them days you had to call 555-1212 for information. And I called up and got the number of Cardozo Law School. They wouldn't give me the address, so I called them up and I said, you know, I need your address. And I sat down and wrote Barry about a 20-page letter with the diagram of the murder scene and where we lived and where she lived and the whole 9 yards. And it was about 6 months later, and I get a little postcard from Barry, and he said, well, send me some newspaper clippings about your son's case. So I did, and another 6 months go by, and he said, do you have a copy of the transcripts? And luckily I did. In them days they cost $1,200, and I sent those to him, and this was a 2-year process, and then finally one day I did get a letter from Barry and Peter. I still got it. I showed it to Barry the first year my son was released, that they were going to take on his case. And Steve's case was 0018, the 18th case that they took on. He was the lowest number to be exonerated, but it took 20 years. So we did all that, and we went, the Sheriff's Department gave a terrible time to get the evidence. We got it all tested. And I really thought I was going to prison to pick Steve up, and it came back inconclusive. Because in them days you used to have to have a whole vial of fluid from the rape kit or autopsy, and they didn't have enough. So I had to go back and tell them, well, another light at the tunnel was the freight train. And that was a horrible, horrible year. He had a student that worked on his case and graduated. In them days, Barry only had about 6 students, very, very small office. We had to pay for our own testing. They didn't have any money for lab work, but we did that. And then she graduated, and she worked on Steve's case for a few years. Whenever we got money, we'd send it to her, and we got a private investigator. We were going to go for a 440 motion, and Steve calls from prison one day and says, Mom, Chris's letter was returned. I said, what? We just sent her $23,000. And so I wrote Barry again, and I said, Barry, I hope you can help us. This is a student of yours. And they did get a private investigator, and Maddie Jerome called me in 2 weeks. And this student was in a horrible car accident, in a institution, in a coma, and she's still there. All his records were destroyed. So we're back to, you know, another square one. Steve was very blessed to have a great sister and brother. His sister's sitting here. They fought endlessly along with me. His brother who was 4 years younger, he had $10,000 saved for a down payment on a house. Lisa had $3,000 saved for siding on her house. They just came over and gave it to me and said, Mom, we need Steve out before we need this. I had put, by the time we got out, I had about 10, 12,000 cash advances on my credit card. So at 64 years old, I had to go back to work and pay those off because my husband and I were on Social Security. And then it kind of stayed dormant for a couple of years. We really didn't know what to do. I mean, we were out of options, we were out of money. We went through everything. All I had left was my house, and I was ready to get rid of that to prove Steve's innocent, because I figured, hey, I'll live in a tent in the backyard. At least I'll have my son free. But if I could have gone to the prison gate and gave my house, I would take my son. They could have had it. And I used to go visit. We'd go every Saturday, and I'd say to the guards, kids should keep me and let my son go home. You know, I've lived the best part of my life. My son was 23 years old when he went in. Missed out on having a family, children, career. He has no Social Security, he has no pension. No matter what they gave him, it wasn't enough. They don't make enough money to pay these exonerees for the hell that they go through. So, and then my younger son got on the internet in 2007 and found out there was an Innocence Project conference like this one in Boston, Mass. And he said, Mom, he said, I'm going out. And he said, I'm bringing the newspaper articles and I'm putting the face with my brother's case. And I didn't know at the time he didn't even have any money to stay in a hotel. It was March in Boston, and he slept in the car for 3 nights. And he begged everybody. He talked to Barry, he talked to Peter, he talked to exonerees. I mean, he's calling me every 2 hours. Mom, I talked to this guy. They found his evidence in a barn, and they're testing it, and you know. And he talked to Lee Dow, who's the case coordinator for New York Project, and he said, well, we're going to take a look at your brother's case. And that was March. In August, Maddie called me and said, when your son calls home, which Steve called home every other day, Lisa can tell you the phone bills raised now. But we didn't care because we wanted to know Steve was okay. And then she said, we're going to reopen your son's case. And I just started crying. And the next morning I called to the chaplains, and Steve had called an hour before she did. And I said, would you have Steve call home as soon as he can? And she went down to his cell, and he said, what's the matter? Because the chaplain never comes unless there's a death or birth accident. And she said, oh, Daddy, you know, you got to call your mom, Steve. And he said, the Innocence Project is going to reopen my case, aren't they? So they did. And that was in August, and they had a dicker with the DA until May. What they were going to test, they ended up testing, I think it was 22 articles. The hair in his truck, towel, and anything. And Steve had the largest lab bill that New York Innocence Project had ever had. And when they bought the bill over, and the check writer said, wow. And that afternoon they got the results that excluded him, and they said that's money well spent. So anyways, it went to testing, and Larry Golden is here. He was president of our bar association when Steve got out. And that year he dedicated it to innocence. And he had Steve's staff attorney, I didn't know Larry, and Maddie DeLone come up, and they did a presentation. And they had just gotten the results of the profile from the girl, and it was a mixed profile. She was a satanic worshiper, and she was gang raped, and the staff attorney said, this is going to be tough, you know, you got to go back to court. And I remember Lisa and I got out in the car, and she just put her out in the steering wheel and, Mom, what are we going to do next? And I said, I don't know. But we can't let Steve know this. Our biggest job as a mother was to mother him through 2 decades of imprisonment. We had to give him hope every single day that we went to visit. In New York State, you can only visit a maximum of weekends. And if he was down or crying, I mean, we tried to change the subject. I'd send him newspaper articles, you know, who died in town, who got married, whose house burned down. He knew every Saturday one of his nieces and nephews made a goal at soccer. I mean, we kept him very abreast of what was going on in the outside world. So that was very important in making it easy for him to step back into society, because he had regular visits, phone calls, packages. So it was, they called me and said a week after the seminar, tell Steve that they're going to come out and do his DNA testing. He's not to talk to anybody. It's a representative from Cellmark Lab and the DA's office. And the investigators told me after, Steve wouldn't say go. My name is Sylvia Barnes, my ID number is 89C1152. Sign it, that's it. Okay guys, how long is it going to take for the results? And they said probably 3 to 6 weeks, and don't get your hopes up because it's been extracted once and the evidence is 25 years old. And the investigators told me when they got out in the car, They called up the DA and said, you know what, Scott? You better wait for you get ready for the shit to hit the fan, because this kid is innocent. He can't wait for the results to get back. And 8 days later, I got a call from the Innocence Project, and it was Friday before Thanksgiving, and she said, are you gearing up for Thanksgiving? And I said, not really, because I really held out hope this would be the year that Steve would be home for the holidays. And she said, I'll never forget this sentence. She said, set another place at the Thanksgiving table. They're releasing your son on Tuesday. I thank God every day for Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld and all the people that work at the Innocence Project, because there was, I guess, 135 exonerees there last night. They not only exonerated the exonerees, they exonerated the whole family. Parents got their kids back. Kids got their non-parents. And I mean, it's just so overwhelming that people do this and care about people that are locked up. I never gave up hope. We're a religious family. My kids all went to Catholic school, not that that made him any angel, because Steve's a partier and he's still a partier and he's happy-go-lucky, and he is. And we had they're doing a documentary from New York University students, and they came up Easter week and filmed their Easter dinner and everything. And he said to me, is there a time you ever gave up hope? I said, never. He shut the microphone off and he said, I need more than a one-word answer. And I said, okay, I can do that. And I said, and that's what got me through it. And faith grows hope. And when you have a lot of faith, you have a lot of hope. And my son was never coming home. He had a life sentence. And I knew that someday, God knew my son was innocent, and he was going to prove it. And my son came home. And since then, Steve and I do a lot. He does a lot more speaking than I do. He's been to Alaska and all over, as most exonerees do. It's very important for us to get the public information about wrongful convictions. Steve wasn't a typical case. He was a white Catholic kid, never arrested, never had a record. He had the best defense attorney he could. So it's just not people that live in the ghettos that go with public defenders. This can happen to anybody. And it's just, I mean, we never had anybody in our family arrested. My father was horrified. It's not only so outrageous you can't believe it, but it's also at the same time so embarrassing, because we lived in a small town and everybody points fingers at you, and you walk in someplace. I mean, I hated to go out to eat or anything because people would be pointing at you and say, oh, you know, there's that kid's mother that he murdered, Kim Simon, and he's in prison and all. And you know, you just pick up your head and say, you know what, the hell with them, because I know my son's innocent, and they can say whatever they want. And now they can all kiss my butt, because my son is innocent. And I have never been ashamed to be Steve's mom. When he got his compensation, you know, they called me up and said, well, you know, how's it feel to be a son of a multimillionaire? I said, the same as it did when my son was a convicted murderer, sitting in jail. He's still my son, the same person. When my son walks in the door free, it's priceless. I couldn't buy his freedom. And no matter what money they gave him, it doesn't change us. I'm so thankful that he's home. Gina wanted me to talk about being known as Mama Innocence. Steve's been out 6.5 years now. This is our 7th conference, and I'm one of the few mothers that goes to every single one. And I was blessed. That was to be my main prayer every morning. Please, God, prove my son's innocence. Just guide me and show me what to do. I'll do the work. And please, God, let me live to see him get out. And I was very fortunate, because I was 67 when my son got out. Not everybody in here is lucky enough to have their mom give them a hug when they get released. And I mother every exoneree. Quite a few of the guys call me mom and all, and I'm very privileged to have them as my adopted kids. They all need hugs. And I was just very blessed that I was one of the mothers that was alive when my son got out. They had me come down to New York City, I think it was 3 Mother's Days ago, to do like a little commercial thing on their website, you know, to raise money for Mother's Day. And I talked about what it was like to be the mother of a convicted murderer and an exoneree and all. So That's why I'm Mama Innocence. I am very proud to be the mother of an exoneree. Never been ashamed of my son. I'm very proud to have everybody in this room as a friend. I applaud all of you. People will say to me, I don't know how you got through this as a mother. I don't know how you people got through being behind those bars. Because when I left the visiting room and they slammed that door, I was still free. I could still go to the mall, I could go shopping, I could do what I want. Even though it consumed you and it was the first thing you thought about in the morning and the last thing at night, I still was free. And I applaud you people for your strength. It's very humiliating to be in a room with people that have such tremendous strength. And God bless you. And I hope I live to be a lot of years to be Mom Innocence to a lot more people.